Merry Christmas, everyone, and welcome to our little group chat today. I'm Sarah Placheski. I'm with Auburn beat writer Jordan Hill and sports editor Justin Lee. We're kind of all spread out today because of the holiday season, but that's not why we're in this Zoom session together today. Something big happened last night, a nice little Christmas present for Auburn with the hiring of a new football coach. So, initial thoughts, what do y'all think of this new hire coming in from Boise State?
I got to say, I really like it. It kind of caught me off guard, and Justin can probably talk about it too. Brian Harsin.
Everybody off guard.
Brian Harsin was not a name that I think had been talked about really at all for this job, and a lot of that has to do with proximity. He hadn't spent a lot of time in the Southeast. He coached Arkansas State. He'd been an OC at Texas for a couple of years, but for the most part, he was Pacific Northwest. And, probably most people thought he would be more of a Pac-12 kind of coach if he left Boise. But, credit to Alan Green and the people making the hire in that it seemed like there wasn't a whole lot of leaks. I mean, it seemed like that name, Brian Harsin, wasn't talked about at all until the hire was imminent. I wanted to bring up a point that Justin Ferguson made over at the Auburn Observer that I thought was really interesting. He kind of compared this to when Florida hired Urban Meyer. I mean, Urban had really no ties to the Southeast, had done really well at Utah and made them, a BCS contender there. They hire him, and obviously it helped Florida get back onto the stage where they were with Steve Spurrier. So that's sort of my take on that, is it makes sense in that, Brian Harsin could be that kind of guy for Auburn. He had tremendous success at Boise State, 69-19, and won a couple Mountain West titles and played for it a few other times. Still a young coach, 44. I think there's plenty of reason to be excited and really interested to see what the next few weeks and months look like for Auburn football.
I think it's an entirely new pathway. It's not something that people projected. I mean, a lot of people thought, okay, you're trying to make that next step up so you get that brand name higher. That's not what they did. When you look at it realistically, you fired Gus Malzahn and you brought in a Mountain West coach. It's a risk. It is a gamble. But what they're trying to do with this, it seems like, is if they expect to, if they give Bryan Harsin better weapons, they think he'll grow. They'll think, okay, him dominating the Mountain West is comparable to his talent there. If we give him more talent, he can do that in the Big East. That's the gamble. That's what they're going to try to do. So in that way, it's kudos to it being a different pathway. Like we say, out of the blue, completely different than anything we expected. It's crazy that he has zero footprint in the SEC. He has zero. He's never been here, and that's part of the risk. That's the risk, because he might get here. He might come here and get blown out of the water because this is the best conference in football. But that's the risk you take when you try to do something completely different that Alabama's not doing, that Georgia's not doing, that LSU's not doing.
And you kind of mentioned him not having a footprint. I know Justin Ferguson also mentioned Auburn hasn't hired a coach that hasn't had SEC experience since about the 1940s. So why do you think they decided to go with this move and think of an outside hire that has never had this experience down in the Southeast?
Why don't we just call Justin? Let's just get him in the Zoom.
We should.
We'll send him a link. I think it's just that's the thing, is that it's all new and all different. And obviously he's going to have to he's going to have to get used to the SEC, and the way to do that is obviously to keep some assistants. I just posted on Twitter, if I'm Brian Harsin, my first recruit is Travis Williams. I'm trying to keep him. He can help familiarize me with what I'm doing here. I like that Urban Meyer comparison as well. It's like, okay, we're trying to bring in this, maybe some of these corn-fed football ideas from up there, bring them here and see if it works when we put this talent around it. That's the thing. It's different.
And I think, too, it's sort of to the point of innovation. I mean, like Justin said a few minutes ago, this is going completely off of what Auburn has typically done and, again, was expected to do this coaching cycle. Brian Harsin's name wasn't being brought up not because he's not a good coach, because he's done an excellent job at Boise State and had done a good job in the 1 year he was at Arkansas State, which – again, this is the funniest thing to me. He replaced Gus Malzahn at Arkansas State. Now he's replacing Gus at Auburn. But it's innovation. It is a gamble. He could come down here, and it could be like when Dan Hawkins went to Colorado. Dan Hawkins was a guy that had a lot of success at Boise State and tried to make that jump, and it didn't work out. But we'll see. And yeah, I think it's a gamble, but it's one that, Auburn was prepared to make. I mean, this is Alan Green's hire. He, went out and got Bryan Harsin, a guy that's got a good resume coming in, but we'll see how he settles in and coaching the SEC and sharing a state with the team that's perennially a national title contender.
And Jordan, we worked on this last night. Mostly you did all the legwork on it, thinking about who could be on Harsin's coaching staff, who could be these top offensive and defensive coordinator candidates. And Justin, you also kind of mentioned keeping Travis Williams. Who do y'all think that will be his pickups, or who might stay from Auburn's staff?
I'll kind of start with guys that, again, this is just speculation because, we're not sure. Could he potentially bring guys that he coached with at Boise State? I mean, again, going back to Urban Meyer, when he got at Florida, there really wasn't that many guys he hired that had SEC experience. It was guys that Urban knew and had experience working with. So that could be, something that Brian decides to do. A few names that I'm really interested in: Kendall Briles at Arkansas. His background as an offensive coordinator is pretty established now from the year at Arkansas, and he did pretty good at Florida State and Baylor before that. And a name I'm really, really intrigued by is Dell McGee, who played at Auburn. Running backs coach at Georgia, has had a lot of success, coaching some of the best running backs in the nation since he's been at Georgia. It would probably take a good bit of money. He's getting paid a good chunk of change to just coach running backs. But, Dell was a high school head coach for several years down there in Columbus, Georgia. And I think he sees himself as one day being a head coach, whether it's group of five or maybe working his way up. But if he stays running backs coach, he's going to have to prove himself. This could be an opportunity for him to come back to his alma mater. Defensive coordinator-wise, I'm really intrigued to see, one, if Travis Williams stays, which Justin was just talking about. Two, if he might get in the mix to be Harsin's defensive coordinator. Could they wind up, making that move? Intrigued to see what happens with Kevin Steele, who seemed to be a candidate to be the head coach. Is he someone that Harsin decides he wants to keep on staff? So it'll be really intriguing. I think there's some really good defensive coordinator candidates out there. I mean, I think about a guy like Derek Mason from Vanderbilt, or if they want to go down the Will Muschamp road again, he's available. And with his contract, it has no offset. So he has there's no incentive for him to not be coaching in 2021 somewhere. So if they want to go with Muschamp, that guy's available. And Justin, what do you think? Who are some guys on either side that intrigue you?
I was going to say, yeah, he, with this move, Alan Green didn't go for that home run guy, but Brian Harsin might do that. he might go get a guy like Will Muschamp to come back for, I guess, run number 3 at Auburn. And man, he's a proven defensive coordinator. Again, we talk about Kevin Steele, of course. We'll see what that relationship is like, and what that's always it's always something you find out. But and then Travis Williams could make that next jump. He could just become associate head coach and get a nice pay raise. That's also an option. Talk about keeping people. It's Travis Williams, and then it's Cadillac for me on the other side. I think those should be his first recruits. And then on offensive coordinator, I mean, it just depends on what he wants to do. Del McGee is a really interesting name for me too. But obviously, I mean, there's Kevin Sumlin. There are play callers out there who, I mean, Moorhead from Mississippi State, you put him on the list, because he's available. It depends on if he wants to go for the big name brand, or if he wants to stick with what he wants to, maybe somebody from his past and what he wants to do.
And we could see, they would still hire somebody, but maybe Harsin gets in and wants to call his own plays. I mean, we've seen that before with Malzahn, so it'll be intriguing and a lot of speculation. But this is the fun part where you just kind of throw names to the wall and see what sticks.
Right. If he does that, though, you got to go for that home run on defense. And for Gus, that's Kevin, and Kevin's a great defensive coordinator. But there are other ones out there, like we say, like Will Muschamp, who's succeeded as a coordinator, but much more so than as a head coach.
And kind of wrapping this up, Auburn's got a bowl game in a little more than a week.
Woo!
They have a new football coach. They might have an entirely new staff. Where do you see this football program going into the Citrus Bowl in Orlando against Northwestern, and kind of beyond into the spring?
It'll be really intriguing because this is just going to be a time of a lot of change. I mean, we may see even between now and by the time that game kicks off against Northwestern, there could be plenty of changes already announced. I'm really intrigued to see specifically with the staff because this is a prime time. It is a prime time if you are on staff at Auburn, if you are interested in other options or you think you're not going to be retained. There are coaching changes going on, so this is an opportunity for guys to leave and get those other jobs. So I think it's going to be a lot of change and probably pretty quickly. I got a feeling we're going to be busy at the OA News for the next, probably until we get to A-Day. But, I think there'll be a lot of change, but I think there's a lot of excitement. I think that this is, a brand new world for Auburn football, and we'll probably see that with guys who may opt to transfer and things of that nature over the next few weeks and probably even months. But I think there's plenty of reason to be excited as an Auburn football fan. And I think that the fans are going to be in for probably a pretty wild ride as we get ready for the Harsin era at Auburn.
Yeah, the bowl game will be an exhibition. It'll be just a showcase, I guess. I imagine Harsin will be on the sideline so that, ESPN can zoom in on him and talk, and it's a recruiting thing, But the result doesn't matter. The honeymoon hasn't even started yet, let alone being over. We'll see. And then, of course, one of the biggest things is just those practices, just getting those practices in. So if this happens, if Auburn does play and this game happens, they'll fully be spending practice, getting used to each other, and they'll just go out there and play and probably lose.
Well, guys, thank you so much for your time today. For anyone who wants to follow the Opelika News' coverage of the Auburn football coaching program or the Auburn football coach and the program now headed into the bowl game coverage, and everything that goes on after, you can visit oanow.com, follow us on Twitter, and follow Justin and Jordan. They tweet out a ton of good content as well. So from all of us here at the Opelika-Auburn News, we wish you all a Merry Christmas.